Well, good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get, that's loud. We're going to go ahead and get started. First question, of course, is can anybody tell I had to put a clip-on tie on because I couldn't remember how to tie a tie since the middle of March? Good evening. I'm Larry Wold. I'm the president of TD Bank in Maine, and I've had the pleasure of chairing the board of the Maine State Chamber Board of Directors. And it's my honor tonight to welcome you all, physically and virtually, to the 2020 Maine State Chamber of Commerce annual dinner. What I hope is our first and last virtual annual dinner. A year ago, but in many ways a lifetime ago, the Chamber hosted its annual dinner at the Augusta Civic Center with over 500 people in attendance in person. And we were really looking forward to this year's event when we were planning to celebrate Maine's bicentennial. And then, of course, all of our worlds turned upside down. But in the days, weeks, and months since March, something remarkable happened. Remarkable, but neither surprising nor unprecedented. Mainers, and with all due respect to those of you who are native Mainers, I'm including anybody who has chosen to live and work here and contribute to our community. Mainers did what they do best. They stepped up, they pitched in, and virtually came together, something we have a long and proud history of doing. Tonight, we celebrate our state's resilience in the face of adversity and acknowledge the extraordinary way that Mainers have responded to the pandemic. We've memorialized these historic contributions in the inaugural edition of our OneVoice Maine magazine, which highlights the life and legacy of Woodrow Cross, a Maine icon who serves as an example to all of us, as well as the stories of many of our community champions. Tonight's presentation features recollections of Maine's former governors of the challenges and crises each of their administrations faced, and in addition, an inspiring tribute to Woodrow Cross from so many of the people whose lives he impacted. So to get things started, I'd like to invite Cliff Grime to the podium for our first presentation.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Cliff Grime, and I'm the recently retired president of Harriman Associates. I retired on July 1st, and I'm just proud to say that the new president of Harriman, and Harriman as an organization, has chosen to continue to sponsor and support the Chamber, and Mark Lee, if he's here, new president of Harriman Associates, right there. So thank you, Larry, for the introduction. And tonight's first video features Maine's governors reminiscing about historic challenges each faced during their administration. And some of you that were here last year saw this in the video that was shown at the annual dinner. But we thought it would be most appropriate to get some of the snippets from each of the governors that interviewed, because, as Larry stated, we're facing a challenge now. And this challenge, I think, can be dealt with like many, many other very significant challenges in the past. And I think if you take a look in history, there are three things that get Mainers or anybody through a crisis. When you look at this video, just look for the words of hope and resilience and collaboration. And that's very inclusive. Stressing the value of relationships in challenging times. And when we talk about relationships, it could be political, it could be business relationships, it could be legislative relationships, but the relationships now are what we need to see to move us forward and through this. And really, Larry mentioned this as well, but really, these governors have credited the collective resilience of Maine people for the successful outcomes of the crises at hand. So with that, let's watch this video and draw from the inspiration that some of these governors have voiced. Thank you.
Politics and governing isn't all about issues or laws or regulations or mandates. It's about relationships and relationship building.
I was a Democratic governor, and for 8 years I was dealing with a Republican majority in the legislature. I was so pleased at the attitude of a lot of members of the Republican Party. We found ways to work together. That's pretty remarkable in today's world to have two parties work together.
And growing up in a large family, as I did, you know, you learned early not to take credit for too many things. You work as a family, you work as an extended family, as a team, and you get things done.
It's amazing what you can do.
Yeah.
From the humblest background. Get involved, but listen to the other side.
The best ideas come from Maine people. Never came from me, didn't come from my staff. Much of what we did came from Mainers coming to visit with me and giving me suggestions.
I think kicking off the bicentennial has brought people together and started thinking about themselves as a state again, as a whole community, not just pockets of neighborhoods.
Remember, the very first motto in my very first inaugural was, Maine is on the move. The idea being, if people start to feel positive, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
What you do and what you say, how you present yourself and your state can make people feel better about themselves, their community, their state.
Too often, government gets distant, and the closer you are to the people, the more you can truly represent them as their voice in government.
And I think one of the objects of a leader is to break down the silos across the state. I make sure people are talking to one another across the aisle and working with one another across the state.
We had the worst flood of the Kennebec River in 50 years. And I can remember being on the banks of the Kennebec in Augusta and Hollowell, helping people fill sandbags to protect businesses and homes. And 2/3 of the people there didn't even live in Augusta or Hollowell. And it was just the way Maine people are in reaching out to people in difficult times.
The ice storm, of course, was an incredible challenge. Probably the greatest natural disaster to ever hit Maine. The best part of the ice storm was the way people came together. Somebody'd call in and say, I'm in Etna and I don't have any water, and people would bring them water. It really was, in a sense, Maine at its best. Maine was tested that week, and it passed.
Maine is one state, not a state divided, but a state united. Even though we have varying opinions, but we're united in many ways.
People in Maine are very fair. I mean, there's partisans on both sides, but for the most part, people in Maine are very fair.
People do have an opportunity to try to make a difference.
There's no limit to where you can go. Don't be afraid to fail. If you want to do something, give it a try.
We are blessed to live in Maine, not burdened by it. And we have enormous opportunity, and we just have to set our sights as high as our dreams will take us.
I always say in Washington, they say, why do you like Maine so much? I say, it's a big, small town with very long streets. We still know each other and care about each other.
That the future of Maine is really, really bright.
I mean, Maine is just a wonderful place. I used to say to people, look, we can't help it, we're from Maine, just people are just better.
I guess I'd have to say I agree with Governor McKernan that people from Maine are just better. So tonight, we are grateful and humbled to be able to celebrate the life and legacy of a true Maine icon. Woodrow Cross, the founder of Cross Insurance, who died in July at the age of 103, was an inspiration to all. And the example he set is particularly relevant and meaningful today as we navigate the COVID-19 pandemic. To commemorate his accomplishments and the integrity and vitality with which he conducted himself and his business, the Maine State Chamber has produced this video tribute of Woodrow Cross.
Hi, I'm Dana Connors, President of the Maine State Chamber of Commerce. Maine lost an icon this year. Woodrow Cross of Bangor, who founded the Cross Insurance Agency, died in July at the age of 103. Mr. Cross had a profound impact on his family and his friends, on Maine's business community, on the Bangor region, our entire state, and well beyond, in fact. While we mourn his loss, there is so much to celebrate about Woodrow Cross's life and legacy. His commitment to family, to faith, and the community. His contributions in business, his dedication to employees and his customers. His was a can-do mindset, a work ethic, a resilience and resolve like no other. He was an inspiration to all who knew him. Woodrow was born in 1916 on a small rural farm in Bradford, Maine, 20 miles north of Bangor. His entrepreneurial spirit was evident early. As a child, he sowed seeds out of a pony cart to neighbors and homemade hand salve to local workers. He later branched out to chicken farming, buying grain on credit to feed the chicks, then repaying the loans when they sold. He attended a one-room schoolhouse until the 8th grade, when he left to help his family run their general store during the Great Depression. And to help make ends meet, he and his father would drive to Aroostook County to buy potatoes to sell in other parts of the state. When Woodrow was 20, he decided to further his education beyond the 8th grade. He began attending classes at a school in Bangor run by Chesley Husson, the founder of what is now Husson University. Just a year later, his father passed away, leaving Woodrow to manage the family store and take care of his mother and younger siblings. In 1943, Woodrow was called to serve in World War II. He was deployed to New Guinea and the Philippines and later Japan as part of the United States occupying forces. Throughout his life, he remained proud of his military service, always marching in the Bangor Memorial Day Parade every single year. Also, in 1943, while home on leave, Woodrow married Jeanette Loretta Bean. When he returned to Maine from the Army in 1954, Woodrow sold the general store, and he and Jeanette moved with their 5 children to Bangor to be a part of a bigger community with more opportunities. After gaining his GED to get his real estate license, he decided to become a licensed insurance agent and started his own insurance company from the kitchen table of his home on West Broadway. He sold his first insurance policy for $7. Marking the start of what we know today as Cross Insurance. He continued to operate his business out of his home until 1963, when he hired his first employee and opened an office in downtown Bangor. Today, Cross Insurance is the largest independent family-owned insurance agency in New England, providing coverage to individuals, small businesses, and large corporations, including Chimbro, the Boston Globe, the New England Patriots, the Boston Red Sox, and the Boston Bruins. Maine's 2 largest civic centers bear Woodrow's name, the Cross Insurance Center in Bangor and the Cross Insurance Arena in Portland. Woodrow Cross was much more than a successful, self-made entrepreneur. His strength of character and kindness of spirit set an example for all of us to follow. An example that is particularly relevant today because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's helping to show us a way forward. Woodrow touched the lives of many in personal and meaningful ways. It is an honor to pay tribute to him. Please join me as we hear the heartfelt words of those whose paths he crossed along the way. This is the life and the legacy of Woodrow Cross.
He's probably one of the nicest people that you're going to ever want to meet or run into. He was a very caring individual, very family-oriented individual.
He welcomed you into any kind of conversation, and you felt like, you were the important person at that time.
I get asked several times a day, how's business? But when Woodrow asked you how business was, he wanted to know.
You better know.
He listened and he wanted to hear how business was.
That's right.
He was always cordial, and all of the times that I've stopped and talked with the agency, he always wanted to make sure we touch base.
He just amazed me with stories he would tell, questions that he would ask, very in tune with the person.
This isn't a super salesman. This is a person that's genuine, sincere, and these are the people we need to deal with in our business.
When I think of Woodrow Cross, he represents all the great qualities of a New Englander: spirituality, importance of family, and staying loyal to the state of Maine.
His father came back when he was just a boy and came and said he had some seed, and he says, go sell these. So he went and sold them, and he came back and said, my father would tell me how that some very nice, kind people would come back and buy some seed from him. And he also sold hand salve. Cloverine salve is what he called it. And in the spring, and he would talk about how the locals would come back and say, young man, I need to see you this spring. I need some of that salve for my hands. And you have to put it into the context of the time that he was doing this. There was no money. We're talking Depression era. He went with his father, and they bought potatoes in Aroostook County and drove down into areas like Bar Harbor or Portland to sell the potatoes in order to find work. And he worked with his father doing that. Then in his late teens, he came back and thought raising chickens would be a good idea.
The first time I met him was I was campaigning door to door in Bangor for the state senate. He was at the kitchen table with his wife, and they were going over their clients in a shoebox full of clients. And they were going over what they needed to do, needed to call back. And it was just one of those times where you're just taken in. They just reminded us so much of my family. Great guy.
This is a man that was part of the greatest generation of all. Came back from World War II, worked at his father's general store for a while, moved to Bangor, started an insurance company for 9 years before he even hired someone.
My father's always been an entrepreneur. As a young man growing up, he would always come back and be impressed with work. He was more about work, and encouraged me to work, all along. He liked it.
Mr. Cross being Mr. Cross, whenever we did finalize a deal with the Crosses or the company, Mr. Cross was the one to sign on the dotted lines and to review the deal and to approve the deal at the end of it, no matter which direction we were going into. So for the past, I'd say, 20 years that I've been involved, to go in and sit down at his desk and to finalize the deal, it was Mr. Cross who finalized that deal. And for anyone who knows Mr. Cross, he loved the making of the deal and loved a deal.
He was always wanting to make a deal, regardless of how small, how large, didn't matter. It's a transaction, and it wasn't a one-sided effort. It was mutual. Right? It was always respectful, it was always mutual. We've all experienced a business transaction that isn't always positive, or an interaction that's positive. This man did not have an ugly bone in his body.
He didn't run the business as a transaction, he ran it as a relationship. And he really viewed that what they were there was to make an impact. It wasn't just to make $1, but it was really to provide a service and do it in a way that made sure people were taken care of. You could just see the caring and the approach, that attention to detail and focus and wanting to do the best possible job. And it was that level of consistency, I think, in every transaction, every engagement, that I think over time people would see that this is not just a one-off. This is I'm gonna have a relationship with a business that's gonna provide me a service. And that's, I think, the key to their success.
I have so much respect for the idea of starting a business from your kitchen table. Yeah. He went, I think, 7 or 9 years before hiring his first employee. He had to work so hard to make sure it was a sustainable business before he could then start to grow. And when you see what he's grown from that small amount, that small kitchen table business, it's an American story that we all, dream about.
When the Cross Center was being built at that time, before there was a name, we were approached about if we were interested in sponsoring it. In fact, during that negotiations, we were told that the Cross family had taken, the sponsorship, and it was a couple months later when we were having the grand opening down there. I was sitting with the Crosses, and I said, geez, what prompted you guys to do this? You kind of jumped ahead of us, And I didn't realize that Mr. Cross used to work at the old Bangor Auditorium at nights. His job, believe it or not, to make money was to keep the salamanders going, the heated things, to make sure the cement wouldn't freeze when they were pouring it in the wintertime. That's what he did. And he said, if they're going to tear that down, we're going to build a new one, I want my name on it. And that's how it ended up.
The thing that I think makes the Crosses so special in business is they listen. Woodrow must have taught everybody the importance of listening, but they listen to the people that they do business with, and they find ways of adding value and giving them peace of mind and security.
He was truly a leader by example. He was first one in, turned the lights on, and then always locked the door, turns the lights off at the end of the day. His work ethic was, can't compare it to anything. So just seeing that day in and day out really instilled that type of mantra in myself.
One of my favorite stories that Jonathan and Royce had shared with me is that he was coming in and came in every day, and then would come in on Saturday mornings, into when he was 100 and through those late 90s. And they finally decided to sit down and say, Dad, you really don't need to come in every Saturday. And he looked up at him and he said, well, what would the employees think if I didn't?
This is a very successful businessman who did whatever was necessary to support his family and to work and create opportunity.
From a business perspective, he was a very humble leader. He was always at his desk, and that's where he was happiest. And right up when he was 99, one of us, either my father, Woodrow, or I would pick him up in the morning at about 6:45, and then would bring him to the office, and then one of us would give him a ride home at usually about 4:45 every day. And that was from when I got started 20 some odd years ago till a few years ago.
I always felt, as long as I've been here, as long as I've known him, that he was my mentor and my greatest mentor. But there are many others that felt the same way too. He didn't hesitate to offer words of encouragement, words of wisdom, a congratulation on a job well done. If a new agent especially would share with them, some of their challenges and some of their successes, he was always eager to hear it and always there to lend an ear or lend a hand.
If I were to come back and mention some of the attributes that I would say my father had, is he wouldn't quit. He had a don't quit attitude and a persistence that he would do that. And it never would enter his mind that we couldn't do something, that when we would attempt something, that just wouldn't enter his mind that we couldn't do it. He said, we can do this. One of the traits that I found most inspiring was his courage. And he was somebody that never had any excuses. It wasn't, he had a very modest education, very modest beginnings, but it was always about thinking about what was going to happen tomorrow. And he wouldn't say this to you, but he always lived just outside of his comfort zone. And he'd bring that out in other people too. So if whatever you did yesterday was great, but let's do a little bit more. He'd never slow down because there was a bump in the road, and whether it was in his personal life or whether it was in his business life, and he faced challenges with passion, and many times heard him say more than anything else is, we can do this.
So I owned Parkside Children's Learning Center from 2010 till 2018. And when I first bought the business, I rented the building. About midway through my tenure, the Crosses purchased the building. Then I have to admit, I was surprised. Why would they want us? Why would they want this building? The building was a one-story, 10,000 square foot, 1950-ish building that needed some work. And the HVAC system was rickety. Soon after, I heard from Alice Dyer, and she asked if Mr. Woodrow Cross would be able to come and tour the facility. And I thought, oh boy, here it comes. He's going to come and see that, now he's made a bad investment because it needs some work. And the big surprise of my life is that Woodrow Cross was there to see the business. He wanted to see the kids and meet all the children, meet all the staff, and know who we were. And that was so heartwarming because I just thought, wow, here's this man in his 90s who cares. He kept mentioning, you are doing such a service for this community. And he would mention again and again about how these children were the future of the Bangor area. And it was so crucial to business and the community to have a service like Parkside Children's Learning Center. That was our first time, but at the end of that particular tour, he asked me, what do you need? And that took me by surprise as well, because how many commercial real estate folks ask you what you need as the renter? And he really wanted to know. So I explained about the HVAC, we talked about a couple other little things, and he said to me, okay, I'll see you soon and we'll come back again. And I have to admit, I didn't know if he'd ever come back again, probably 2 weeks later, I heard from Mechanical Services, and we were well on our way to a brand new HVAC system. And that was a huge expense. It was something that was a major investment in that building and in our business. But he had left word with them that we were to have a state-of-the-art system.
As the Cross Agency grew, what I think Woodrow and Royce realized is that the sports teams of New England were a way to brand and be aligned in a retail way with powerful symbols in our community. The Crosses also support two of the other major sports teams in New England, and those relationships, all of them combined, I think have correlated well with the trust and the confidence that they have with the people in New England.
I grew up in a devout Christian home with him. He had a faith in God. We would go to the services regularly. In those days, it was different than it is today, in that you had church Sunday morning, and the minister would wade through the snow to get to church, and the rest of us would wade through snow and sit there with the furnace off with our coats on while you had your church service. Sunday morning, you went to church. And that was the home that I grew up in. We thanked God for our meals before every meal, ate together. I remember both my parents were country people, and it was traditional country style that we grew up.
His importance he placed on his faith was extremely big role. That's where he came from, and that's where his life started, and that was predominant in everything that he did. His involvement in the church and the youth group and whatever he could be involved in, and his teaching of his children to do the same. So that's extraordinary.
He was a gentle soul, wonderful man, and he was very smart. He was a very intelligent person. Very intelligent person. He got it, but much of it was intuitive. It wasn't formal. It was intuitive. If I asked him where that came from, he'd tell me. I'd bet money that he would say, That's God-given. You see, that's his religious belief, that it wasn't about him, it came from somebody else, and he was just doing what he thought was important. You can't help but smile when you think about it.
My father talked a lot about his military and what he learned from that. He was very proud to have served in the military, and he would think about it often. He loved marching in the parade, the Memorial Day parade. He enjoyed doing that.
He never wavered from his principles. He wouldn't take a business meeting on a Sunday. That regardless of what was going on and regardless of what may seem to be important, he just wouldn't do it. Sunday is not for work.
Never changed, never wavered. He was always looking ahead to what the next project could be or what the next challenge could be, and always encouraged those around him, those that he had hired, those within his boy, those on his team, to get in the game, feel the same way, and just instill that in everyone around him, that ambition, that excitement.
And this is the way I would sum up what Mr. Cross was and what he did. To create a life, you want to create a good life, so you can't wait to wake up in the morning. And that says it all about Mr. Cross. Yeah. Because when he woke up, it was early, and he hit the road, and he kept running, but he enjoyed it, because he created it. And to me, that was what Mr. Cross is all about.
He built trust with the people he interacted with. I've never heard anyone say a bad word about him or his family. Not once, not one time. His legacy lives on with his family.
I think what Woodrow did, developing his business and his family and staying loyal to the state of Maine and being there, are the same qualities that we've tried to emulate. And it's an honor to try to spend a few moments just thinking what a great man he was.
Mr. Woodrow Cross, I had the pleasure of meeting him a few years back in Bangor, and you guys hosted me on an unbelievable trip, and from the little I got to meet of him, he seemed like an extraordinary man, so prayers to you guys. Take care.
As I look back on him, if I was to talk to a stranger about my father, I'd probably start with his faith. He had a very strong faith in God, faith in family. He loved work, loved life, he enjoyed life. His mother used to say that as a child he'd always wake up happy, and he was a pleasure to work with. So he enjoyed life, found it exciting, wanted to enjoy life, and did. So I think that even in some tough situations, he was able to come back and to enjoy it. And he grew up in poverty. I think maybe Walton's type existence would be a comparison, and then went through other things, but he said he would do it over again, that it was a great life, and some might say not so great. He said it was a great life and he enjoyed it. That was his perspective, was the one that mattered. He was a great guy all the time that he was here on earth, to sit down, and he was a fun guy to share things with. He was a fun guy for me to come back and say, we're doing this, we're doing that, we've got this going on, this good thing happened. I really enjoyed talking to him about that. Miss that a lot. Miss sharing what we're doing and what's going on with him a whole lot.
Woodrow's life story is truly inspiring, and his legacy is unparalleled. The Maine State Chamber of Commerce is honored to pay tribute to him. We thank the Cross family, the Cross Insurance Agency, and everyone who helped make this tribute to Woodrow possible.
The outtakes.
things that our grandfather instilled in us.
Yeah.
We feel like we're not working right now, so there's a little bit of anxiety.
You're not serious.
We're just both a little bit nervous because, again, talking about things that our grandfather instilled in us.
Yeah.
We feel like we're not working right now, so there's a little bit of anxiety about being away from our desks and our emails.
Sometimes he didn't tell us necessarily what the end game was supposed to be.
We figured that out on our own. Yes, yes, the challenge.
No, I think you just like shopping. I like things like shopping.
It's the iconic Cadillac. You know, a person like Mr. Cross.
That was
he never.
He
never
never
had
drove-
one.
he never drove a cab,
But
no.
he never purchased one.
Yeah.
Oh, he never did?
No.
He could have bought them.
Yes, many of them.
Oh, yep,
Many
yep.
of them.
Yeah.
No,
This
it's
is
very,
bad.
very practical when it came to his automobiles.
Yeah.
I was actually disappointed in Joe Quirk's sales ability. I knew that he really wanted one, but and I thought Joe could have closed the deal.
You know, Royce drives one, and again, Mr. Cross was around when Royce got him, and I am sure that deep down inside, and even now that Woodrow's smiling, that when Royce drives around in his Cadillac.
Mr. Cross saw the crane. This is a big crane. And the next thing I know, he's up on the catwalk with the operator. The dialogue begins with the operator having to explain every motion with a lever. What does the crane do? Tell me what the capacity is. And just everything you can imagine. He was 96, 97 years old when he did that. But he was like a 10-year-old kid, you know, playing in the sandbox with a toy because he was overjoyed with this.
When he was honored at the Bangor Chamber, at that time, he and Jen were chatting as they usually were. And I came over to say hello, and so if I had been talking to Royce, and he said, you know, you should probably stop by and interrupt Jen before she gets him to spend more money. But I leaned down and said hi to him and everything. He says, you know, you have an important job, but your job is nothing compared to hers. He says, she's making sure that Bangor is good for the next 100 years. You know, so remember that.
Thank you. Well, and thank you very much to the chamber and all the people involved. It means a lot to see this, to not only us here, you know, within the business and within this community in Bangor, but to see the state, at a state level, recognize him. He would be incredibly appreciative of that. And he did say once that, it might have been when he received the award from the Bangor Chamber, he said he's an old man. He thought people would have forgotten about him, and he appreciated the attention.
Am I good? All right, good. Wow, that was, I can't remember the last time I looked around a room with 50 of the busiest, most important people I know, and there wasn't a cell phone out. No one was talking to anybody else. Everybody was just absolutely riveted on that video. So we can see what a huge footprint he had in Maine and beyond. He embodied a genuine, purposeful spirit that lives on in his family and those whose lives he touched. His can-do philosophy, combined with a resolve that is true to Maine and quintessential to New England, has earned him a place in Maine's history. He exemplified what it means to be a real leader, not just in the business community, but in the community at large. Honestly, I'll always consider it a real highlight of my career to have had the honor of twice honoring Woodrow Cross. I had the chance to present him with the Norbert Dowd Award at the Bangor Chamber dinner when he was celebrating his 100th birthday. And I remember it so clearly. we were going to have him come up on the stage and play the video, but he wanted to stay in the audience so he could watch the video, which he did. And then he came around and came up onto the stage in his wheelchair. And as you would imagine, there was a long and heartfelt standing ovation for him. And then he wheeled around and went back down to his table. And I was about to start again, and Royce signaled me and said, my dad would like to come back on the stage. So he wheeled back around up onto the stage, and he stood up out of his wheelchair, and he waved to the entire audience. And it was several months later, probably, that I was up seeing Royce about something else, and I said I was so impressed by that he was so proud that he wanted to stand up and show everybody that he could stand. And Royce shook his head. He said, no, that wasn't it at all. He felt that because they have stood for him, that he should stand for them. So it wasn't about pride at all. It was about respect. And I think that really captures who he was and how he lived his life. So at this point, Royce, if I could invite you to join me on stage, and we can present you with the 2020 Dear Ago Award in memory of your father, Woodrow. I'm not supposed to touch it. I'm supposed to let you pick it up.
We don't take it.
No. I shook his hand virtually.
Thank you very much.
So the Maine State motto, Dear Ago, embodies the idea behind our Dear Ago Award that we give to a person or a group that embodies the spirit of confidence and commitment to economic growth to the state of Maine through their actions and beliefs. And it's a wonderful, one-of-a-kind, hand-blown glass sculpture that's produced by an artist by the name of Ben Coombs of Casco Bay Glassworks in Woolwich. So the Maine State Chamber is honored to have saluted Woodrow's life and legacy in business, the community, and his home state of Maine. Thank you.
Royce, I want you to know that globe that Larry referenced, you will see on it a replica of the state of Maine. And that's purposeful because your dad certainly had his influence on the state. And that being a globe, I'm sure it extends far beyond. So again, I can't tell you how much pride we took in having the opportunity and the privilege to meet so many people who thought so much of your dad. It was really a real privilege for us. The biggest problem we had was all that we interviewed, of which there were about 20, to reduce that. You wanted it at 15. That was impossible, but getting it down to what it was and looking around the room, it was clear that they enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed doing it. So I hope you receive it with incredible pride on our part for having the opportunity and the privilege to do it. I learned so much. I thought I knew your dad reasonably well based upon his business success and his acumen, but in those interviews, by the heartfelt expressions that people shared with us, he defined success in so many different ways, and it was clear that it wasn't just his business acumen that defined success. It was really a person who had a warm heart, who had a caring soul and a kind spirit. And that's why, in my opinion, through the voices of those other people, that he did touch so many lives of people around the state. A real incredible guy. And I know you were very lucky, because you've said so a number of times, that he was a part of your life, but the state of Maine is very proud that he's a part of our lives as well. So we thank you for that. We have 15 minutes to kill, so I'm going to read every sponsor and talk about each one. No, that's not true. That's not true. But I would like to have you put up the sponsors, because we had an incredible support this year. This was not a normal annual meeting, as Larry has described, and as we all know, because we all deal with the same challenge. And I couldn't be more pleased with the team at the Chamber for the magazine, for helping us put together this video, as well as taking that part of the video of the 7 governors of a year ago and finding those spots within the video that really did address what the challenges are today and the secret to get through it. So I do want to I won't be able to read them all because literally it will take 15 minutes. But I do want to name the ones that provided us some tremendous gift of financial support. They all need to be thanked, and you find them, I think it's on page 4. I would ask you to take a look at it. But I want to thank our legacy sponsor, Anthem, our programming sponsor, Cross Insurance, our Center of Attention sponsor, Kennebec Savings Bank, our audiovisual sponsor, Headlight, our cornerstone sponsors, Charter Communications, American Chemistry Council, Comcast, NBC Universal, IDEX, and Unum. Our streaming sponsors, Central Maine Power and Spectrum Healthcare Partners. Our award sponsor was Poland Spring Water Company. And I'm sure you participated in our Taste of Maine reception, so I really thank Mike and Memic for sponsoring something that it was hard to find. But it was a true tribute to your commitment to us. We thank you. Senior sponsors, when I said I was going to read them all, I was being figuratively, not literally meaning that, okay? But I do want to thank them. Bangor Savings Bank for sure, Unitil Corporation, Maine Department of Economic and Community Development. You are going to do this, okay. Corporate sponsors, Central Maine Healthcare, Hannaford Supermarkets, Jackson Lab, United Insurance, Versant Power. Contributing sponsors, AT&T, Maine Health, Norman Hanson, Detroit. A video sponsor, Quirk Auto Group. And there they all are. And I say it with sincerity. Again, we have, you all can go back to the bar now because the door is going to close. Nobody can leave. And enjoy, the bar still is open, isn't it? Reception? Okay, great. And in a few moments, you're going to see one of the last, but not the last, debates. I will say that we had every intentions and expected it to be in person. But because Senator Collins, I think I mentioned this earlier, was called to DC, the rest felt that if she was going to be on virtual presentation, so shouldn't they. So we had no choice, but you're going to see in a few moments. The information's the same. The medium is a little different, but nevertheless, we're pleased that we have this opportunity and we look forward to it. In the meantime, know how much we appreciate all of you being here, supporting us, and we hope you enjoyed the program as much as we have enjoyed bringing it to you. With that, I thank you for the evening and all that you do to support us. Take care, enjoy.
St. Mary's Health System, we have been caring for this community for At St. Mary's Health System, we have been caring for this community for generations, and it's why patients trust our doctors, nurses, and care teams. The COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in many changes, but one thing that hasn't changed.
Tonight, the candidates fighting for Susan Collins' Senate seat will face off once again in our
supporters from both sides are out here. Now, this sudden change is because
At St.